It is great to be with you. I wish circumstances were different. Again, we're using this as an opportunity to urge all of our citizens to do in a very calm and reasoned way that which they can do to be prepared for circumstances unlike those that any of us have experienced before. So, what I want to be very clear about is that we have time to prepare. And roughly that time is from now, at least it projected to be from now, until about 12 midnight Saturday. After that point, preparations time will have passed. We will be experiencing high winds from approximately that time forward, which means that you have the rest of today, all day tomorrow, to make the steps or take the steps necessary to prepare yourselves. And again, in a very calm and reasoned way. There is enough time to secure your homes, enough time to secure anything that's in your yards that might become a projectile as a result of the high winds that we will undoubtedly experience. Now, I want to be very clear. Anyone who is living in an area that has previously experienced flooding, you must, from this moment forward, assume that that area is going to be flooded again. And we earnestly recommend that you now plan to be absent from that condition starting at 12 midnight Saturday. We'll update you with respect to any changes. This storm is starting to move more quickly, and that's why we've had to adjust some of our presumptions. Again, there is ample information on ct.gov/Irene with respect to preparations that you should be taking in your own homes. With that, I'd be happy to handle some questions.
12 midnight on Saturday would be too late for you to order evacuation. At
what
point would you do that?
We would do that probably by midday tomorrow.
Right. And has your forecaster, the state meteorologist, suggested to you that this is going to be worse than they thought yesterday at this time, or better?
I think it is in keeping with what we our case scenario that we were running as of yesterday. What's interesting is the storm is the two interesting things that don't necessarily go together. The winds have dropped slightly, but the pressure has dropped, and usually the pressure is a predictor of future winds. And we know that the Atlantic is warmer than usual, so this storm is capable of recovering higher category status within hours.
And does he still anticipate the storm surge at the time of high tide?
We are now anticipating a surge at high tide, so we are preparing for surges in the 4 to 5 foot range. We also believe that once the storm vacates the area, that we're going to see extraordinarily low tides and fast-moving tides. So people should not be surprised by that experience either.
Mayor Bloomberg is positioning boats in sections of lower Manhattan that are prone to flooding. Is the Army or anyone else doing the same thing?
We are absolutely 100% urging any citizen who has ever experienced flooding in any part of the state previously to take the steps necessary to vacate those circumstances by 12 o'clock midnight Saturday night, and that may move to an earlier hour if this storm moves more quickly. We don't have the resources to do individual evacuation plans for every single citizen. That's why communicating with you at this time in very direct terms is what we're doing.
What's the schedule that you've been given for when this storm is likely to cross the shoreline and stay headed?
I think we should assume tropical force winds beginning at 12 midnight Saturday and continuing through midday on Sunday. So this is a very large storm which will dump large amounts of rain as projected now and sustained winds for a very long period of time. We are a much more wooded state than we were in 1938. What we are actually anticipating is tremendous tree damage and limb damage. And I will also warn you that what we're also anticipating, based on current predictions, is the large-scale loss of electricity across the state, and not just for a few hours, days and weeks.
So when you talk about evacuation, it's essentially the state's not going to send in buses to get people out. You're telling people get out on your own.
We are working on an urban evacuation program and giving special emphasis to that. What I'm urging right now is that every citizen who knows that they're prone to flooding, and by the way, I just completed a conversation with about 200 municipal leaders where I gave the same information. But of course, we are prepared to move populations should that be necessary. Where that population is particularly concentrated, which is to your question. But we have many citizens who live relatively far distances from one another along the shore and along rivers and streams, particularly in the western part of the state, that really need to take those precautions and plan to take those precautions themselves now.
What cities are you preparing urban evacuations for?
Urban areas. So we're working on plans for all of our cities. What I would say to you is from Greenwich through New Haven.
And would that entail sending buses in, opening up schools, moving people? I mean,
Those decisions will ultimately be made in the coming hours in cooperation with communities and trying to understand what we're looking at. Now, having said that, although we have large urban populations in and along the shore, those populations are not necessarily concentrated in the lowest lying areas. So we're not planning on moving 3.5 million people. We can't do that. What we're asking is that all of our citizens who are capable of doing that themselves do it now, and then we will work with community leaders on a city-by-city, community-by-community basis. But we also are laying plans for a long-term energy loss as a result of this storm, and we'll speak to that as the hours and days go forward.
On that point, since the storm is so wide and crews will be needed in all these states, where will CL&P be getting help from?
CL&P has taken an extremely proactive stance. I have to congratulate our utilities on that. They have arranged for upwards of 600 crews to come into the state following the completion of this event, and they are still working on securing additional.
600 in addition to their own crews.
Correct.
From some places that are not in the east.
Correct.
Governor, you mentioned tropical storms.
Actually, you know what? Let me correct myself. The 600 may include some of their own that they've brought about as a result of canceling vacations.
You mentioned tropical storm force winds. Does that mean that Connecticut may not get hurricane force winds?
No. What I want to be very clear. We are going to receive, there's a 75% likelihood that we are going to receive the full brunt of a hurricane, Category 1 or 2, in Connecticut. The reference to tropical force winds are really the outer bands of this hurricane. And those winds could begin approximately at 12 midnight. We are also taking plans to close highway systems, and particularly the Merritt Parkway and the Wilbur Cross. Probably, although this is not a final plan, but it's information to be shared, probably also beginning at 12 midnight Saturday.
Would any other highways be closed, or just those two?
Right now, those are the two that we're concentrating on, and that is due to the extenuated close proximity of trees to those roadways.
Governor, will you be activating the National Guard?
The National Guard is ready. We can't do a lot from 12 o'clock Saturday night until the storm moves out. So they are ready to deploy services on a wide-scale basis beginning Monday.
Beg your pardon, could you repeat your directive regarding the parkway?
In all likelihood, we will be directing that the roadway will be closed. I can't give you the specific hour, but for early planning purposes, people should assume that come midnight on Saturday, those roadways will be closed.
Well, why? Because they have low areas?
They have low areas, and they have extensive amounts of trees immediately adjacent to the roadways. We have already experienced this year, for instance, the loss of life as a result of a tree drop on the Merritt Parkway. So as a precautionary measure, there is a likelihood, which I'm telling you about now, that those roadways will in fact be closed from 12 midnight forward. Now that,
Parkway and the Wilton Cross.
correct.
Governor, with a long period of power outages statewide, now you're talking about things like stores, gas stations, places of business, no power. Are you doing any advanced planning for that in terms of the health effects of people without food, water, fuel, etc.?
We are doing all of that. We are marshaling and understanding our resources on the energy generation basis, in contact with our hospitals, our colleges, our universities, other institutions that have the ability to generate their own energy. And certainly we're going to look, if we have this prolonged period in which we don't have energy available to the population, we will work with those institutions to make sure that we make life as easy as possible for our population by use of facilities on a coordinated and cooperative basis.
Are there any other roads that you would anticipate possibly closing, for example, Route 8?
Right now, we're concentrating on the highway system because it is an extremely difficult road to keep people off of. There probably, undoubtedly, will be other local routes that will become impassable. I think this is really what you need to concentrate on. As of now, the moment in which we believe the time to have completed all of your actions, including travel, is 12 midnight Saturday evening. To plan to be on a road or to be out of one's safe place beyond that hour simply does not make any sense. I will warn you that we might move that forward by a number of hours if the storm picks up additional speed. It's also possible we might move it back a couple of hours. But I think for planning purposes of all the citizenry of the state of Connecticut, they need to assume that anything that they need to get done has to be completed by that time. And they need to batten down the hatches by that time.
Can we interpret that to mean that you're anticipating closing all of the highways at midnight on Saturday?
That's not what I said. What I have said is, at this point, for planning purposes, citizens really need to concentrate as having completed all of the steps necessary, including securing their own person by that time, and that is a preliminary hour. Okay, I'm going to wrap one or two more, and that's it.
Your latest model for the Sunday hit is what time on Sunday?
I think.
It's changed.
Right. I think we're talking about an early Sunday hurricane event, but I really think that we would be doing our citizens a disservice, given that we've had a very wet summer, particularly late summer, that the trees in this state have probably never been heavier at this time in August than they currently are. And that we're a substantially more wooded state than we were just 20 years ago. So what we're really concentrating on is everything bad that's going to happen is going to happen beginning 12 o'clock at night and is going to continue at least until 12 o'clock the next day and perhaps beyond. So this is a very wide period of time in which I'm urging every citizen and every institution to take all the steps necessary to secure their most important resources. I happen to think that's the human resource. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Governor.